The obituary then describes how Cheney became the CEO of Halliburton, but with no context and without asking the obvious question: why would an oil services company benefit from a CEO with no prior business experience who had been a politician his whole career? Perhaps his previous roles as Chief of Staff and Defense Secretary in the US government were more useful to the company than any management experience. And of course, Halliburton's stock price and the multi-billion-dollar contracts it was awarded post 9/11 to rebuild Iraq and Afghanistan reflect the interest the company saw in Cheney.
The risk of inaction are far greater than the risk of action.
Cheney's legacy of wielding the US's military might for private profit continues to shape global politics today, none of which makes it into the BBC's cleaned-up, polished narrative. These aren't small editorial choices. This is part of a broader pattern of major media institutions routinely softening the legacy of Western politicians. They turn war criminals into respectable statesmen and trade accountability for nostalgia. And in doing so, they reinforce the idea that the violence of empire is just another inevitable feature of geopolitics. Not something to be questioned, not something to be criticized, just an unavoidable externality of the dangerous modern world. The article makes no link between the appetites and desires of the US military-industrial complex and the resulting US foreign policy.
A lot of what needs to be done here will have to be done quietly, without any discussion, using sources and methods that are available to our intelligence agencies, if we're going to be successful.
One of the most significant omissions of the article is that Cheney was actually found guilty in a war crimes tribunal held in Kuala Lumpur in 2012. He is a convicted war criminal, alongside George Bush and Donald Rumsfeld and 5 others from the Bush administration. They were found guilty of war crimes in Iraq and Afghanistan. The decision was seen as symbolic, since the UN didn't recognize the tribunal's authority. But how there is no mention of this verdict in the obituary is astounding. If we let institutions like the BBC whitewash Cheney and his legacy of war, torture, violence, and empire, we legitimize the system he helped to build, a system that treats human lives as expendable and forever wars as policy. To honor his victims and the victims of the US war machine, we must remember him not as an controversial vice president, but as a heartless man whose decisions reshaped the world through violence and suffering. We must remember him as a relentless war criminal at the service of the US oil industry and military-industrial complex with a shameful legacy.